Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County Cop Watch, and we got a cop blocker here that needs your help and needs donations. He's been fighting freedom for freedom since 2011, and he had a bogus lawsuit thrown at him, and it took him 3 years to get it thrown out. Now he owes a lot of money, and he's looking for donations, and at the same time he's still fighting for freedom. Very extremely active. I found him on COPBLOCK, and so yeah, they've got the Facebook page here. They've got, what else do they got? They've got another, well, that was a regular web page. They got the Facebook page here. He's got a YouTube channel. What else do we got? This is his regular. You can connect to him through the regular page here. And then, of course, this is where the money is, right here. GoFundMe, Constitutional Liberties Matter, and so they're trying to raise money to help pay the bill. Yes, as you can see, the number there, it got pretty outrageous. Fighting for freedom. And took 3 years to get the lawsuit thrown out. Very, very sad. But anyways, when you get a chance, donate if you can. Check out his pages. He's been fighting for a long time. He's ex-military, and I believe it looks like he's a freedom fighter, libertarian freedom fighter, which I'm about ready to switch parties myself. The Republican Party is dead. In my opinion, it's gone full socialist, fascist. But anyways, and like all of his pages, give, super good guy, deserves the money, and I'm gonna attach the video to this. He said I could, so the story of what happened, and yeah, it's sad, it sucks, man. Our court system sucks balls, and that's why it got so out of hand. Anyways, check him out, man. Give him some money, like all of his stuff, and wow, fighting for freedom.
Give us a little bit of background about yourself as we get started.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Nathan Cox, as Pete already said. I'm actually an Army veteran. I joined the Army in 2006. And I kind of had a political awakening, so to speak, while I was in Iraq from October of 07 to December of 08. I heard about this guy behind me named Ron Paul, who helped kind of cure my apathy, so to speak. When I got just shortly before the end of my tour, I started plugging into organizations like Campaign for Liberty, because I was getting out of the Army in the summer of 2009. I wanted to kind of hit the ground running and make a better impact and difference in people's lives and liberty versus, what I realized I was doing the contrary kind of in the Army. When I got out of the Army in 2009, I got really involved, whether it was a few political campaigns, and then I started going to events like Pork Fest and meeting guys like Pete and Ademo and other folks, and I ended up launching Virginia COPBLOCK as a result of me being illegally pulled over, and I think that was in 2011 maybe, by a Virginia Commonwealth University police officer. He pulled me over because he didn't like something that I said, which was simply, quote unquote, "Stop harassing people, we pay your paychecks." He pulled me over. And we got the attorney that I hired, which was a constitutionally minded attorney named Tom Roberts, who is also affiliated with the Rutherford Institute in Virginia. He defended all that. Then we turned around and sued the Virginia Police Department, which we actually settled out of court for 10 grand. But it was during that time period, which is when I launched Virginia COPBLOCK, which is actually, Pete, I don't know if you know this or not, but there's actually a little bit of irony behind that, because two reasons why I joined the Army was one reason was, up until that time, I was actually, there was a few years where I was actually trying to become a police officer myself. And I don't know if you ever knew that, Pete, but even prior to my political awakening, I I didn't have the greatest run-ins with the police. And I had this idea of the type of police officer that I wanted to be, which was unlike any that I had ever met. So I wanted to be kind of on the inside, not only having an influence on, you know, people who are already in the department, but I wanted to be the type of police officer who was really involved in helping people in their communities and not, you know, giving out tickets and this and that. Because although I was politically apathetic before joining the Army, my two big gripes with the government was taxation and the police. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that you had aspirations to go into police employment yourself, as did I, and it sounded like we both, you know, had similar motivations, but just had experiences that didn't bode so well. But so yeah, I wanted to talk to you today about another incident you had. You mentioned the VCU incident, and when you first got connected with this attorney. But the incident, I was surprised. A little backstory. Just, you know, recently I was on some social media and I saw that you had posted a campaign that someone else had started, a GoFundMe campaign, seeking to raise a little bit of money to pay back some legal expenses you had. And I thought to myself, what happened that, you know, Nathan needs some coin? Like, what new incident happened? And then I was reading the text and I saw, wow, this is related to an incident that happened years ago. I couldn't believe. Well, actually, I can believe it's legal land and it's pretty crazy, but I couldn't. It was surprising to me that it was still going on. Most notably because of, you know, it was, to me, something that had already been addressed. But would you give an overview of that situation, the incident I'm referring to, and kind of just maybe like the big bullet points on how that all has unfolded thus far?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And again, I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with this with you about this. So it started in Memorial Day weekend in Virginia. In 2012, I was coming home from a side job that Saturday, and you know, I don't know about other states, but in Virginia on holiday weekends, it seems like the Virginia State Police is just all over the interstates trying to issue as many citations as possible. And that's, you know, honestly, on the way home, it was about a 20-minute drive from where I was to on home, and I honestly, no exaggeration, saw at least a dozen or a dozen and a half cops. And I was just about 2 miles from my exit, and there was a traffic stop that, for whatever reason, they felt that they needed like 4 or 5 cop cars for one, you know, traffic stop. And when I passed that traffic stop on Interstate 295, for whatever reason, a cop ended up pulling out and following me. And long story short, it was a trooper Melanie McKinney, pulled me over for 2 non-moving violations. One, my inspection sticker had expired. The other was, my front license plate was not visible. I didn't have it attached to my car, although I did have it in my car, kind of on my dashboard. So she pulls me over. And, you know, of course, I'm in the habit of recording the police like we advocate to do. And so I'm, you know, when she's pulling me over, I'm in the process of, you know, getting my things together, my wallet, I'm getting my phone ready to record and all this stuff. And, and at the time I had a Civic, you know, it had a lot of political type of bumper stickers. It had a big Veterans for Ron Paul decal. So, anyway, she pulls me over and immediately demands that I get out of the car.
Get out of the car, please.
Why are you asking me to get out of my car?
Because you've been doing something.
I was getting my wallet out of my center console.
Step out.
And I felt was very aggressive towards me. And in fact, I had described it in previous interviews or whatever, or writings, that it was the second most aggressive traffic stop that I had ever been in. And so she opens the door, tells me to get out. So I'm, you know, there's 2 videos online. One is my cell phone view. The other is actually her dashboard camera, which I acquired. And so she's getting out. I'm trying to record her. And for the first couple minutes, you know, she's actually trying to swat the phone from me. So she's much shorter than I am. So I'm holding the phone over her head so she can't reach it. And she, you know, from one one side of her mouth, she's saying, "Oh, your cell phone could be a gun. Please put it down." While on the other side of her mouth, when I was trying to say, "Listen, it's a cell phone. I'm recording you," she's like, "Oh, you can record me. Just let me pat you down." So like, there's double speak coming from what she was saying. So long story short, I ended up complying, which I sort of regret. But I ended up putting my cell phone down against my spoiler at the time, which was facing her cruiser, because I thought that we were going to be interacting in between our vehicles. So I ended up doing that, and that was after, you know, that was, and you'll see this in the video for anybody watching, that was after, you know, she literally made contact with me several times trying to get the phone for me to stop recording. So ended up turning into like a literal like 28 or 29-minute traffic stop. She had about 3, maybe 4 state troopers guarding on the side of the road while she wrote the tickets. When she walked back to her car, I didn't see this when it happened, but she actually took my phone and laid it face down on my trunk so it would no longer record. And I didn't see her do that, but at one point while I'm trying to talk, you know, because I use that 30-minute traffic stop as an opportunity to communicate our ideas to these troopers who are guarding me. And I ended up noticing by looking that my phone was somehow laying flat down. I was actually at one point begging them, "Hey, let me get my property." It was like 100 degrees that day. I was afraid my phone would get damaged. I said, you know, what if it does get damaged? Who's going to be responsible for this, right? So long story short, I dealt with these 2 non-moving violations. I got one of them dismissed. Then I filed the Freedom of Information Act request, which is how I got the dashboard camera and some other electronic forms of communication, some text messages and some other stuff. And in her own dashboard camera, she tells her colleague that she knew it wasn't a gun, that she just didn't want to be on YouTube or whatever. So she had no problem violating my First Amendment right to record her because she didn't want to be online. It was all about 2 years after, you know, that was all said and done, you know, that was in the past. And then all of a sudden, 2 years after that, the next thing I know, I'm getting a summons for a lawsuit in small claims court in the county that I lived in for defamation. And turns out it was from this trooper Melanie McKinney. So she had like, I don't know, there was like 12 or 18 claims that I supposedly said that were defamatory. And, you know, I'm a Christian. I'm not in the habit of making slanderous or defamatory statements against anyone. I knew I had done nothing wrong. A number of attorneys, you know, that were Facebook friends of mine, along with paralegals, looked at her filing and, you know, they thought it was a joke and frivolous. And so I showed up to that court date. I had a paralegal there and an attorney on the side to give me any advice who were there doing it pro bono. And she ended up not showing up. She claimed that she thought it was in the afternoon. So as a result, the case got dismissed, of course. And then I think she ended up filing an appeal because she wanted to push this thing. And when she did that, it went to the higher court, circuit court. That's when I lawyered up with the same gentleman or firm who had already represented me in 2 prior First Amendment cases, one of which was the one I've already referenced, the VCU police incident. And he was going to represent me. She got an attorney, and it went from a $5,000 suit to a $1.35 million suit, a 27,000% increase. Which is just absurd in and of itself. So unfortunately, the case dragged on for like maybe 2.5 years, close to 3 years, and there was several hearings, several discoveries, and as a result of all that, you know, my legal bill got to what it is now, which is around $94,000. The first hearing, which I can't even remember the date now, but the first hearing they got most of the claims dismissed off the bat. Actually, most of them, all of them but one, if I remember correctly. And but all the while, they were trying to get these discoveries to build up their case more and more. And so the last claim against me, I think they just dealt with this past November, which is something that I said when I was invited to speak at the University of Richmond, a group of law students. They invited me in to talk about Virginia COPBLOCK and what it was all about. So, and I published that video on the Virginia COPBLOCK YouTube channel, and I had said something like, quote unquote, she pretty much assaulted me or whatever, which is no way defamatory. These claims were just bogus. So that was dismissed. And then the most recent hearing, which was maybe 4 or 5 weeks back, was actually to try to get some of my legal fees compensated. Because there's 2 ways to go about doing that. There's one, you can countersue, which I'll talk about that here in a second. And then there's the other one is filing sanctions against, I guess, maybe her or her attorney, however that works in legal land. And for whatever reason, at that hearing, there was a brand new judge. And as a result, I think we just kind of lost that, front to beginning to end kind of aspect of the case. We kind of lost that continuity, in my opinion. And I can only really expect but so much from this injustice system to begin with. I was very thankful that I was vindicated because I knew I didn't get anything wrong. But as now I'm dealing with this legal bill, and so
yeah, not to mention the years of your time and energy that you've had to put towards trying to speak truth to these ridiculous claims and whatnot. So what was the motivation, do you think, for this Melanie McKinney? I mean, why a second suit? Why? I mean, I've seen her quotes of saying like, hey, I'm not a tyrant or whatever. She's like, I'm not one of these bad officers. I want to help people. But, it seems like subjecting you to this legal land situation for these number of years and and claiming that she was so harmed that she's due over $1 million seems pretty far-fetched to me. Did you ever have any interaction with her, like, I guess, in passing in legal land proceedings or just elsewhere? Is she still employed, to your knowledge, in that capacity? Or?
To my knowledge, she is still employed, and I am somewhat familiar. I do recall some of those quotes that she said, as far as she's not a tyrant or whatever. But after my incident, several times through the Virginia COPBLOCK Facebook channel, I asked if anybody had ever been pulled over by her, and whatever the experience was, to reach out to us. And we had a handful of people that also had very bad experiences with her. And one of the things I was really hoping to retrieve from this case, because I couldn't do it as a citizen, I was hoping to do it by way of discovery, was a complete list of complaints against her. Because unfortunately, that type of information, at least in Virginia, is protected under the Freedom of Information Act request, which is pretty backwards in my opinion. If you have a police officer out there who has a history of misconduct or complaints or bad behavior, that should be available to the public for obvious reasons. They're public, for some reason, or if a police officer has a number of those things, in my opinion, that's a safety concern or a public safety concern, and people should be have the right to know about that. So I was hoping to get information like that, but I didn't. As far as if I've had any communication with her, I will tell you that, I don't know, it might have been, I think it was just before it went to circuit court and maybe just after, I had sent her a couple of emails basically saying, hey, listen, I don't know why you're mad at me. I have done nothing wrong. I told her, I would like to, just settle this as adults civilly, outside of court. I even went so far to tell her that I was praying for her safety while she was on the job, and so on and so forth. But I never once got a response. I don't even know if you know this, people. We actually, I'm almost certain, I can't confirm this, but I'm almost certain that not only her, but I was reached out by the Judge Judy show. They wanted our case on their show. And from what the producer told me, and again, this is what the producer told me, she agreed to supposedly be on the show. And they were gonna pay whoever lost, they would pay that $5,000. They were gonna pay, an appearance fee to us. Everything was gonna be covered. But the reason why I didn't want to do that was because I know Judge Judy is not a real judge. She's a private arbiter, which means she can make any decision and not be held accountable for it. And this boiled down to my First Amendment rights, and I didn't want that to be a mockery of it on TV. So, you know, those are the reasons why I didn't take it to Judge Judy. But hopefully that answers your question as far as my dialogue with her and stuff like that.
Yeah, certainly. So you did a lot of things to me right that day. You know, you filmed and you were very calm, and you weren't aggressive. You weren't you know, and after the fact too, you did lots of follow up. You did a Freedom of Information Act request. You got all that electronic data that you talked about and communications, and you were very transparent. And through this whole thing, I guess, is there anything in retrospect that you wish maybe would have unfolded a little differently? Any lessons learned?
No, that's a great question. In fact, I don't think I've been asked that question. You know, like I said earlier, I sort of regretted putting my phone down, and you know, in retrospect, I might not have complied because, you know, I knew my phone wasn't a gun. I felt at that time, and really still do, that was an absurd notion, because she continued to say that, you know, she acknowledged that I was recording. She even said I could record, but then she kept on saying it could be a gun. So, you know, I kind of regret putting the phone down because obviously people like you and I understand the importance of that objective record by way of a video documentation. But other than that,
and this was back in 2012, right? So this was like well before apps like Cell 411. Or maybe even Bamboozler. I know Quick existed at the time, but not much else. Did you record to your phone directly, and then you were able to maintain possession of your phone after the incident?
Yeah. I know at one point you were using, was it Quick? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yep.
Yeah, and I was using that too. But yeah, to answer your question, it was a hard copy to my phone, which I obviously did retain. And it ended up being put online.
Nice.
So, but yeah, of course, I'm sure you would agree that if you have the opportunity to stream live, that's probably the best way to go, because that way, if your phone does get confiscated, the video is already out there. Plus, if a cop knows that you're streaming live and have an audience, they might think a little bit more twice, so to speak, about, you know, violating you or victimizing you. Perhaps if they know that they got even more eyes than just your eyes on them, so to speak.
Certainly. Well, what message do you have? I know, so, you know, you were a former, you know, in the military. You were, you've put, to my knowledge, a great deal of energy and effort to try to share ideas that are based on peace and consensual interactions with lots of folks. You know, spearheading a big project called the Liberty Empowerment Project in the Richmond area, and putting a billboard up, and all sorts of things. Jury nullification's been a big drive of yours as well. I guess I just mentioned these things because, like, what message would you have for any police employees that are watching? I mean, it's easy to, I think, have a knee-jerk reaction, like to look on, like, to say, oh, this guy's been to Legal Land a number of times. He's had to lawyer up a number of times. He must be doing something wrong. But I would say, you know, it's in fact a complete opposite. And would you have any statements to any police employees that might be watching that to try to maybe bridge that, what they might have as like a knee-jerk reaction to where you actually are coming from?
Yeah, you know, I actually have friends that are police officers, and you know, I don't make generalized statements against police officers. Obviously, people like you and I understand where their income comes from, which I'm not really trying to expound on. But you know, obviously, there's some police officers who are more, I guess you could say, damaging to the public than others, or reactive to the public than others. But you know, I personally, I don't hate the police. I really, dislike what they do to people quite often when people are victimized, most especially when it's violence that's really manifested, whether it's, you know, outright abuse or whatever. But you know, something that you and I have talked about in the past is, you know, having non-abrasive communication towards the police, because whether it's my neighbor or somebody that I assemble with at a local church, or whether it's the police, you know, people like you and I, we want to spread our ideas and our values and our principles to people. And we're certainly not going to do that effectively to a police officer if we're being disrespectful or derogatory or using certain types of language towards them or whatever. You know, I just try to use opportunities to talk to police officers if I'm in a situation, you know, to share with them my ideas about things.
Most cops, like, we're huge. Like, I believe the government's taken away a lot of our rights, which is ridiculous.
So if folks are familiar, if they were following this all these iterations of this legal land situation, which has now left you with some a little bit of coin owed to the firm that helped you out, if they've followed the whole trajectory, or if they're just learning of it now, and maybe I'll put links in the video description that they can get more up to speed if they want more detail from what you said. But how can folks help you address that now? Where should they go, and what could they do?
Yeah, great questions. And I'll start off by saying, you know, I have had a few critics, if you want to call them that, say, you know, why do you have this bill? Why can't you countersue, or this, that, and the other? And I'll just kind of answer that real quick first, because I know that's going to come to people's mind. Is countersuing at this point, we feel, is just not advantageous, right? I'm already $94,000 in the hole as a result of this case going on for almost 3 years, as a result of multiple hearings, court appearances, discoveries, which takes time. That's why the bill's so high. And if we were to try to countersue, that would, you know, they would have to spend more time, which means more money, to build that case. And then, of course, in this criminal justice system, we're not guaranteed any outcome that would be beneficial for me. So that's why we've deemed countersuing as not advantageous. And like I said earlier in this conversation, we did have a handful of very solid and justifiable reasons that when my attorneys filed sanctions against her or her attorney, however that works, to recoup some of that cost, or a good amount of that cost. But like I said earlier, you know, that for about 5 or 6 weeks ago, whatever that hearing was, for whatever reason, there was a new judge, and that judge, you know, wasn't quite up to speed, in my opinion, because it was a brand new judge, you know, and she just decided to shoot all of our stuff down, and that's why I wasn't awarded any funds. So as far as donating, like you said earlier, my attorney did start a GoFundMe campaign. If you got on GoFundMe, you could probably just search like Nathan Cox, or I think he called it Constitutional Liberties Matter is the title of it. So if you Googled or searched one of those on GoFundMe, you'll find it, but I know you're going to put the link in the description. I've also told people that, you know, they do, of course, have that fee, a commission fee or whatever. So if anybody wanted to get around that, they could PayPal me directly, because I do send in monthly payments to my attorney. It's not like I'm asking people to pay and I'm not paying anything, of course. I would never do that. So for people who already have sent me money by way of my PayPal, I liquidate that every month and include that into my payment, which is something I just did yesterday. And I've also, for anybody who insists on donating in Bitcoin, I do have an address, which that to me, I'll honestly say that's a little bit inconvenient for me, but for people out there who absolutely insist, that is another avenue that you can donate on. And PayPal.
And what is your PayPal address, Nathan?
My PayPal address is Nate, N-A-T-E 5176 @gmail.com. You know, I'll just say that, you know, I hope situations like what I've been involved in with this officer or state trooper that we've been discussing, and even other incidents I've been involved in, primarily First Amendment related incidents. I hope things like this doesn't deter people from getting involved and getting activated, because, you know, I know to some degree it does. People don't want to be, the last thing that people want is to be retaliated against people like the police. But, you know, don't let that be a deterrent. You know, one person literally can make a difference in this world, and one person can have a tremendous amount of impact in your own community. Whether it's handing out literature door to door like I've done, whether it's handing out literature in front of courthouses, whether it's, you know, taking opportunities to speak to groups of people about the principles of liberty, about the ideas of personal responsibility and accountability and stuff like that. So don't let your fears get in the way of of making things happen and trying to make a difference. That's probably the last thing I'll finish on.
Right on. Couldn't finish on a better note myself. I appreciate your time, Nathan Cox, and your efforts.
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County COPWATCH, and I wanted to explain what fair use is. You can use pieces of news articles if you're doing it for news reporting, you have commentary, and you're doing it for education purposes. So that's what fair use is, as you can see right here. Another reason why I wanted to make this video is to let you know I have just joined with Patreon. A nice thing with Patreon, I make no money on YouTube. They took the money away years ago, and so this is another way to give, and it's a nice thing too, because you can give monthly. You can give $1, $5, $10, whatever. I do 4 to 5 hours a day on trying to wake the sheeple up on how corrupt it is and different ways that you can fight the corruption. So Patreon is a way that you can do it, and then of course the old way is still there. Donate to Sheriff County COPWATCH with PayPal or credit card. So keep that in mind. 4 to 5 hours a day. I make no money, but the corruption happened to me and I'm sick of it, so I'm trying to wake people up. But my wife would love it if if we could get some help out there. There's 47,000 subscribers. Just think, if each one of you subscribers just gave let's say actually, yes, $1 a month. 47,000 subscribers gave $1 a month. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But anyways, that would be great if it did happen. But you know, do the math in your head. Just think about it. Like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. I get no money from YouTube. YouTube has gone nuts. You can't do anything anymore. They're taking the money away everywhere. So these are a couple different ways that you can still help out with all this time that I put in. And as you know, I'm in a special situation where, you know, at least I can do it. You know, 4 to 5 hours a day. We have a cleaning company during the day. That's what allows me to do this, and we're debt free. So this is my hobby. I don't go fishing and all that other crap. I try to save the world. So help me out to make the wife happy, man. In fact, if you guys did give $1 a day, and there was 47,000 of you, and you did it, and each of you gave $1, and that was every month, oh my God, yes, I could quit. I could start suing them. Another idea too that we have is, you know, if I got, you know, some funds, we could actually contact everyone that has been ticketed and or arrested and put in jail and start sending them postcards to let them know we're here, and to see if everything went all right, and if it didn't, find out their story. So we could even do more investigations and more lawsuits. Lawsuits take money. So just think about that. You know, 47,000 of you so far right now. You know, $1 a day. I mean, $1 a month on Patreon, or $5 a month Patreon, 10, 20, whatever. Just do the math in your head. Help out. This is a lot of work every single day. Thanks.